In the year 500 BC, a message could travel from the Aegean coast of modern Turkey to the heart of Iran in just 7 days. 7 days to cross nearly 2,700 kilometers of mountains, rivers, and deserts. The same journey took 90 days on foot. 90 days compressed into 1 week. This was the Piradasish, the Royal Road Relay System, and it was the circulatory system of the largest empire the world had ever seen. The Achaemenid Persian Empire stretched from the Indus River in the east to Macedonia in the west, from the Aral Sea in the north to the cataracts of the Nile in the south. 20 million people, 70 distinct peoples, and a land area of 5.5 million square kilometers, all connected by roads. This is the story of how infrastructure built the first global supereconomy. Let's start with what the Persians inherited. Before Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon in 539 BC, the Near East was a patchwork of regional economies. The Assyrians had built some of the first imperial roads, but they used them primarily for military conquest, moving armies, not goods. Trade routes existed, but they were slow, dangerous, and unreliable. A merchant moving goods from the Indus Valley to the Mediterranean might spend 2 years on the round trip, losing a quarter of his cargo to bandits, bribes, and spoilage. Then Cyrus unified the Medes and Persians, conquered Lydia, where the first gold coins had been minted just decades earlier, and took Babylon, the commercial capital of the ancient world. He faced a problem every empire builder confronts. How do you control a territory too vast for any single ruler to visit? His answer was the satrapy system. The empire was divided into roughly 20 provinces, each governed by a satrap, a regional governor who collected taxes, maintained order, and answered directly to the king. Cyrus understood something his predecessors had not. Control requires communication, and communication requires roads. But it was Darius the Great, ascending the throne in 522 BC, who transformed this insight into an economic revolution. Darius didn't just build roads, he built a system. The centerpiece was the royal road itself, 2,699 kilometers from Susa, the administrative capital in western Iran, to Sardis in western Anatolia. But this was not a single road, it was a network. Branch routes connected Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, Babylon, the commercial hub, Ecbatana, the summer capital in the Zagros Mountains, Bactria on the Afghan frontier, and the borders of India. The engineering was extraordinary for its time. The roadbed was 6.25 meters wide, enough for 2 chariots to pass, and paved with a hard-packed gravel surface held within stone curbs. Sections excavated near Gordium in modern Turkey show Roman-quality construction built 2 centuries before the Romans. The road crossed the Tigris and Euphrates on pontoon bridges, wound through the Cilician Gates in the Taurus Mountains, and cut across the Syrian desert using a chain of fortified way stations. Along the entire length, 111 posting stations were placed at intervals of 25 to 30 kilometers. Each station had fresh horses, fodder, water, and lodging for couriers. The system supported 2 types of travel: the Piradasish, the express postal service using mounted couriers who relayed messages in 7 days, and the slower caravan traffic moving at 20 to 30 kilometers per day. But here's the critical economic insight. The Royal Road was not primarily built for trade. It was built for administration and military logistics. The economic benefits were a byproduct, and they were enormous. The Royal Road allowed Darius to do something no previous ruler had managed: tax an empire rationally. Herodotus records that Darius reorganized the tax system around 519 BC. Each satrapy was assessed based on its economic productivity, the first recorded instance of data-driven fiscal policy. The total annual revenue was 14,560 Uboan talents of silver. That's 232,000 kilograms of silver every year, roughly $650 million in today's prices, just as tax revenue. But this number hides the real story. The tax wasn't collected in coin. Persia barely minted coins for internal use. Taxes were collected in unminted silver by weight, plus in-kind contributions: grain from Egypt, horses from Armenia, timber from Lebanon, lapis lazuli from Bactria. The royal road made this possible by giving satraps a reliable way to transport their tribute to the royal treasuries at Persepolis, Susa, Ecbatana, and Babylon. Let's break down who paid what. Babylon and Assyria together paid 1,000 talents of silver, the highest assessment. Egypt paid 700 talents plus a share of the fish harvest from Lake Moeris. India paid 360 talents of gold dust, the equivalent of 4,680 talents of silver, making it by far the richest satrapy. The Cilicians paid 500 talents plus 360 white horses, one for each day of the year. The Colchians and Arabs didn't pay cash at all. They delivered gifts in kind every 4 years. The Persians themselves, as the ruling people, were exempt from monetary taxes. But the Persepolis Fortification Archive, a collection of tens of thousands of clay tablets excavated in the 1930s, shows they still paid taxes in kind and in labor. The Royal Roads courier system was the ancient world's fastest communication network. Xenophon, the Greek historian, called the couriers the king's eyes and ears. They operated in relays. A rider would gallop to the next station, shout the message to the waiting rider, and the fresh horse would be off within seconds. Herodotus famously wrote, "Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds." This phrase, later adopted as the unofficial motto of the United States Postal Service, originated with the Persian Herodotus. The speed was astonishing. A message from Susa to Sardis, over 2,500 kilometers, arrived in 7 to 9 days. Compare this to the Roman Empire's Cursus Publicus, which managed about 80 kilometers per day at its peak. The Persians achieved nearly 3 times that speed 500 years earlier. For the economy, this meant that price signals, market information, and royal decrees could travel faster than any goods. When the king adjusted tax rates in Babylon, every satrap knew about it within 2 weeks. When a crop failure hit Egypt, the royal granaries in Susa could respond before the famine became critical. Information asymmetry, the advantage of knowing something your trading partner doesn't, was dramatically reduced across the largest economic zone in the ancient world. With the road network in place, trade exploded. Goods that had never crossed the full width of Asia began moving regularly. Indian gold, ivory, and aromatic oils flowed west through Bactria and the Iranian plateau. Lapis lazuli from the mines of Badakhshan in modern Afghanistan, the only source in the ancient world, traveled to workshops in Susa and Babylon. Siberian gold entered the empire via Bactria, traded by Sarmatian nomads whose burial tumuli near Orenburg contained Achaemenid objects. Turquoise came from Chorasmia, carnelian from Sogdiana. From the west came goods equally exotic, Greek wine and olive oil from Ionia, Phoenician purple dye, worth its weight in silver, made from the secretions of the murex snail, Egyptian papyrus and linen, Cypriot copper, Attic pottery, timber from Lebanon, the cedars that would roof Persepolis and panel the palaces of Susa. The Persian Gulf ports became major entrepôts. Darius completed the canal from the Nile to the Red Sea, a precursor to the Suez Canal, by 2.5 millennia, allowing goods to move from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean without portage. The canal was wide enough for 2 triremes to pass, and its construction was recorded on granite stelae that archaeologists have recovered. Babylonia emerged as the central hub. Its merchants handled dyestuffs, iron, copper, tin, and wine from the west, trading them for eastern luxuries. The temple archives of Babylon, thousands of cuneiform tablets from the Persian period, document contracts, loans, and partnerships involving merchants operating across the entire empire. But here's the paradox. Within Persia proper, there were no marketplaces. Herodotus and Strabo both note that Persians did not buy and sell in open markets. The Elamite tablets from Persepolis, the administrative records of the imperial heartland, contain no direct evidence of trade. The Persian economy was built on redistribution, not exchange. The king collected taxes in kind and redistributed them as wages, rations, and gifts to the nobility, the army, and the workers who built Persepolis. Coinage was virtually unknown inside Iran. The gold daric and silver shekel that Darius introduced, the daric weighing 8.42 grams, the shekel 5.6 grams, were minted primarily for trade with the Greeks and for paying Greek mercenaries. Inside the empire, payments were made in weighed silver and goods in kind. The secret of the Persian economy was that it didn't try to homogenize its subjects. Each satrapy maintained its own laws, customs, language, and economic practices. Babylonians used their ancient contract law, Egyptians kept their temple economies, Greeks in Ionia continued to mint coins. The Persians didn't impose a uniform system, they layered their administration on top of existing structures and extracted value through the roads. This was the economic genius of the Achaemenid system. Instead of fighting local economic traditions, which had defeated every previous empire that tried, they connected them. The roads made it possible to move goods without moving people. The satraps made it possible to tax without conquering again. The couriers made it possible to govern without micromanaging. The result was an economic zone larger and more integrated than anything before. By the 5th century BC, a merchant in Sardis could order goods from Kandahar and expect delivery within 3 months. A Persian official in Memphis could send a report to Susa and receive a reply in under a month. An Athenian pottery merchant could sell his wares in Babylon and be paid in silver that had been mined in Anatolia, refined in Susa, and shipped through the Persian Gulf. Of course, empire doesn't come cheap. The royal road required constant maintenance. The way stations needed fresh horses, fodder, and guards. The bridges needed repairs after every flood. The satrapal bureaucracy, governors, scribes, tax collectors, inspectors, consumed a significant share of the tribute. The king's inspectors, called the King's Eyes, regularly toured the empire checking accounts and reporting on local conditions. There was also the cost of corruption. Satraps were notorious for skimming off the top. By the 4th century BC, some satraps had become so wealthy and powerful that they could challenge the king himself. The revolt of the satraps in the 360 SBC nearly tore the empire apart. And then there was the fundamental weakness of the Persian fiscal system. It depended on conquest. The 14,560 talents of annual revenue that Darius had organized included tribute from peoples who had been conquered, not economic partners. When the empire stopped expanding, when there were no more wealthy provinces to absorb, the revenue stabilized. And a stable revenue in a growing economy means one thing: the tax burden was falling as a percentage of GDP. The Persians tried to compensate by increasing taxes on existing subjects, but this only alienated the satrapies. Egypt revolted repeatedly. Babylon chafed under Persian rule. The Greek cities of Ionia, the wealthiest part of the Western Empire, rebelled in 499 BC and triggered the Persian Wars, a conflict that drained the treasury for decades. When Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire in 331 BC, he didn't destroy the road system, he inherited it. The Seleucid and Parthian kingdoms that followed maintained the same routes. The Romans, when they expanded into the east, found Persian roads that were still usable after 3 centuries. The Silk Road, the most famous trade route in history, followed the same corridors that Darius's engineers had mapped. The modern highway one in Iran, the road connecting Tehran, Kam, Isfahan, and Shiraz, follows the ancient Persian route. The Istanbul to Tehran railway traces the path of the royal road through Anatolia. The communication infrastructure that Darius built is still shaping the movement of goods and people 2,500 years later. The Persian Empire's roads are often described as military infrastructure. They were, but that's like describing the internet as a military project, technically true, but missing the point. What the royal road system actually did was create the first integrated economic zone covering 3 continents. It reduced transaction costs across a territory larger than the Roman Empire at its height. It enabled the first rational tax system in history, and they proved a lesson that every empire since has relearned. The fastest way to get rich is not to hoard gold, it's to connect people. The richest empire wasn't the one with the most silver. It was the one that could move a message from Sardis to Susa in 7 days.